So we discussed the morning routine that we wake up with the Modeh Ani, setting the tone for the entire day. The Modeh of the Ani, the one first and foremost in waking up, has to be conscious that they're waking up. More specifically, that they were woken up. But it's them uniquely. In other words, Modeh Ani, I acknowledge myself. Shechzarta bi nishmasi, that you've restored to me my soul. And unlike all the other blessings, when we speak about in plural, Asher natan lanu and bachabanu, that you gave us, and so on and so forth, over here, as we mentioned before, the uniqueness, Shechzarta bi nishmati, you've restored to me my soul, recognizes the Ani is my soul, and all the features and all the strengths and all the challenges and all the quirks and everything else is what was woken up. In other words, it's not a fluke that the I in the present state of being with my disposition is here today. Rather, each and every one of us must recognize that each and every day in itself is a unique piece of history. And as such, this day is truly, truly revolutionary in that it never happened before, nor will it ever happen. And Hashem, with His infinite wisdom, recognized that in order to make this day full, complete, how much more so from what we're going to, when we're speaking in the morning classes, now Baal Shem Tov's approach to Hashgacha Pratit, every piece of today is part of this beautiful symphony. And I am not just a note, I'm one of the instruments to play this symphony. And because of this, God gave me the notes that He gave me. Whether it's my strengths, whether it's my weaknesses, whether it's my challenges, my greatest aspirations and my greatest doubts, all of that is part of the uniqueness of today. And therefore, I have to acknowledge the me. Because if God woke me up, it means every part of my existence, my predispositions, my genetics, epigenetics, and everything, that thousands of years of gene pooling was all there and put into motion for this very day. Which, waking up with this mindset, as we said before, as we know that the first moment of the day is called the rudder of the day, it sets the tone of the day. And how much more so if you listen to the father-son recording that Sulik and I were sitting and he was asking me these questions. We know that our brains operate on different wavelengths. There's the alpha wave and beta wave and theta wave and delta wave, etc., etc. The alpha wave is the suggestive wave, the hypnotic wave. In other words, when somebody wants to go into a hypnotic state, they are brought into alpha. It's the most receptive. These states naturally occur within our day twice daily. Once when we wake up, and once right before we go to sleep. And therefore, in the most suggestive point of the day, in the beginning of the day, the first thing we have to do is acknowledge the I. You know how powerful and of a drive that is, of a feel for the day? You know how many people don't live their life? How many people don't live their day? And the same people complain about their settings. How come he says this? How come she does this? And so on and so forth. Not recognizing that it's not because he or she, it's you're not living your life. If you bring all your strength and all your abilities to today, Torah guarantees us that the day, what is the meaning of a day? Yom is light. Then the day will be truly luminescent. For each and every one of us are here to bear light on the day. When we say light, we're not talking about physical light, we're talking about clarity. Each and every one of us are brought into a certain place at a certain time in order to bring clarity to that situation. However, that clarity needs to come about, but it needs to come out, and there's only one that could bring the clarity, and that's you. We could look at it on a much more particular level, which is how many billions of cells do we have? If you take one strand of one DNA in our body, it would literally span, if you stretch that DNA strand, it will go all the way beyond the moon. You can't imagine. But each and every piece in each and every cell in itself has an absolute purpose. So too, the you of today have an absolute purpose. But for this, you need to be present. That's the modani. Then we went on to the second, al Netilat Yadaim, to wash your hands. But Netilat Yadaim is not rechitzat yadayim. Rechitzat yadayim is the word rechitza lirchotz, to wash. We don't say, in English we call it wash. But in Hebrew, netilah doesn't mean wash. Netilah means raise. You raise your hands. As we spoke about the two reasons why we wash our hands in the mornings. Number one, because we're a brand new creation. Because when we went to sleep is 1/60th of death. And when anything that's living has light, has energy, flowing energy, creative energy, and anything that's death is the cessation of that energy. When there's cessation, then on a spiritual level, tumat sets in. So we wash our hands, and we're going to see now, based on the text on page 26 and 27, why we wash our hands. But interestingly enough, the first reason is we remove the tumah from specifically the hands. And number two, like the Kohanim, when they enter to serve in the Mishkan or the Beit HaMikdash, they too would wash their hands and their feet. We do not wash our feet. Spiritually, there's a reason why they need to wash both their hands and their feet, psychologically so too, but washing our feet doesn't apply to these generations. But washing the hands absolutely is important, because with these hands, because after all, the hands are the hands themselves on the body are the furthest away from the body in itself. And as far as the hands are tied into the power of deed. We know that each and every one of the soul in itself has three garments. Has the garments of thought, which is united and united with the neshama, and the thought is always streaming. It's the most sensitive of the garments. And to a certain extent, our sages say a bad thought is worse than a bad deed. Not only because thought, let's just say in garments, would be akin to, let's just say, silk. It's so refined, silk is so refined that if you stain it, it's very difficult to take it out. But number two, because a bad deed, a deed has a limit. It has a time and a space in which it was enacted. And therefore, it's measurable, and you could actually quantify it, and you could do something about it. But thoughts in itself is so subtle and so abstract that it's very difficult to pinpoint. And once it starts and you let it stream, it doesn't stop. It just keeps on ravaging. It doesn't stop. Where deed, has a finite limitation to how much of the deed, how far the deed went, and therefore you could quantify and make tshuva on that. There's a garment of thought, there's a garment of speech, and there's a garment of action. We spoke about last week that the Hebrew letters are not matter-of-factly written. Rather, the Hebrew letters are drawn in order to reveal the way the godly frequency and the energy enters this world. Each letter in itself begins with a yud, and then continues as a vav, and then continues, right? The letter that is akin to the three garments of the soul is thought, speech, and action. Hey, the letter hey. Let's see if I have a hey over here somewhere. Here, right here. Perfect. Right here. the inner kaneh, the inner wall, which is the one that's retracted, it's the garment of thought.
What is the...
Hey, you see?
Okay. Oh, on the right. I do see the hair. What do you mean, like...
Here.
Can you repeat this again?
Yeah, right here. Hey is right here. So, hey, right here, the inner line, that's the garment of thought. It's most united with the thinker. It's one with the thinker. Speech is connected to the thought, but streams outward already, because speech is for the other. And speech is only audible so long as the speaker is communicating. Once the communicator stops speaking, it stops. And then the yud, the chupchik, over here, the chupchik in the middle, that's it.
Notice Marissa's the only one not there. She doesn't know what it means.
I don't know how to say it, but the yud in the yud, as you see, that's the garment of action. It's already outside. As action in itself doesn't require, once the person made the phone, once the person made the cup no longer needs them. It's the most external. The power, the hands are the most external to our body, the furthest away from our body. And with the hands, this is how we create in this world. This is how we interact with this world physically. In order, because our neshamot came here not to be spiritual, our neshamot in heaven before they descended had the greatest and most intense spirituality. The reason why their soul descends into this world is to draw spirituality to the corporal, to the grossest, the lowest level of corporality. As Moshe Rabbeinu says in the Torah, Lo b'shamayim, Torah is not in heaven. In other words, the entire purpose of Torah is not to elevate us upwards to spirituality. The entire purpose of Torah and Judaism is to draw spirituality into the corporal, into the day-to-day. And for this reason, when we wake up, in order to be productive in this world, we wash our hands. We remove the tumah, any impediments, any egocentric, any self-absorbed, any potential issue that stems from the ego, the body consciousness, which would prevent us from being sensitive and vibrant and lively to produce our emotions. To bring productivity into this world. Because the ultimate impediment to being productive, and this was what we asked last night, what's stopping you right now from being the most productive right now? Who's stopping for you achieving the best of the best? What's stopping you? Which gun, which sword? The ego. Only the ego. Only the ego. Because only in the ego, as we spoke about last night, the animal soul records traumas and everything else for training purposes. But we are not our egos. We're not contained to behave one way or another. So in order to become very productive and not be taken aback, we wash our hands to remove the impediments. As we know, the Torah tells us in Tehillim, Sur merav asetov bakesh shalom v'redfeu. Abstain from evil, do good, seek harmony, and pursue it. Very interesting. Before we even go on, the Baal Shem Tov has an amazing teaching on this in this recording, the Hayom Yom. The verse clearly gives us the outline of life, of Judaism, of the pursuit of purpose. Step number one, if you want to pursue purpose, first and foremost, you have to remove any impediments to that purpose. Any physical impediments, any mental impediments, any emotional impediments, how much more so any spiritual impediments. Because if a person perceives everything through impediments, they risk bringing that impediments into that purpose and contaminating the purpose in itself. So the Torah says, first and foremost, abstain from doing bad. The Talmud gives us a great analogy to this. You can't bring clean furniture into a dirty house. Because if you bring clean furniture to a dirty house, you're going to tarnish the furniture as well. So first, if you're going to pursue good, first you have to rid yourself of any negativity. Then, once you remove the negative, now you can start doing good. Well, perhaps that was a conventional wisdom, and there were generations that were able to accomplish this very, very deliberately, to zero and hone in on negativity, work on it to either to eliminate it, transform it, whatever it is. But in a lot of generations where exile became very, very palpable, it becomes harder and harder to remove negativity, especially inborn negativity, because we don't have the insight and the foresights that the previous generations had. So comes the Baal Shem Tov and says, well, we could understand this verse differently. Sur beira, abstain from bad through doing good. Because the more you start doing good, the more you focus on the light, the less the darkness can occupy itself in your life. Many people wrote to the Rebbe regarding certain issues that they're having, certain proclivities that they had that no matter how much they tried, they couldn't get rid of. And when they tried to fight with it, it just brought them down. And the Rebbe often suggested, on the topical layer, divert your mind from it. In other words, perhaps this is not your fight right now. Yes, this is an issue, but don't get hung up on it. Rather, focus on what does work in your life right now. Focus on the light. What is strong of you? Remember how many times we've said this before. Don't ask yourself what's wrong with me, but rather what's strong with me. If a person is self-obsessed with what's wrong with me, there's a good chance that they will never come to a point where they recognize what's strong with me. I just came from a class in Crown Heights, and one of the points that we brought out is a point that we've discussed several times, that if a person is self-aware, and they're real, they're quote unquote, they're real. They're not faking it, they're not imagining it. Unfortunately, however, many times people do amplify the negativity in their life, they do amplify the issues, but let's just say they're very, very, they're straight to the point. Now they come to recognize that something is wrong. Inborn, outborn, whatever it is.
What does that mean? I'm sorry. What does that mean, inborn, outborn?
In other words, I have inherited certain traits and certain behavior patterns where there's from epigenetics, or maybe it's nature, or maybe it's nurture. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's the way I was raised, right? Now go try to start mining for that and try removing that and plowing for, and removing that toxicity. A, we didn't ask for it. B, as the Rebbe often says, a person who wants to pursue the meaning of life and keep on pursuing it to discover at what point you actually start living your actual life. At what point do you start becoming actual in this world? You're going to wait and going to wait, you're going to wait, and at what point do you actually start living your life? As we said before, each and every one of us are here on a daily basis to make history. And so you're going to be waiting until you all rid yourself of negativity and all pure and everything. Well, you know what? The Baal Shem, there's a very famous parable that the Baal Shem Tov gives of a maidservant, a maid in the king's court. And she's in charge of cleaning up the king's court. One day the minister walks by the maidservant and sees that she's lightly dusting. Meanwhile, it's schmutzig, it's dirty all around. And he says, I see you're lightly dusting, but why aren't you cleaning? He said, no, I can't. So what do you mean you can't? So well, if I get down and dirty, I'm going to tarnish my clothing. And if the king comes and I'm standing in front of him dirty, that's a treason to the king. So I cannot dirty myself. Says the minister to the maid, then you don't understand what you're here for. Then you're living in a fantasy. You're hired to clean up, and yes, you're going to get dirty. But that's part and parcel of your service. To wait until you feel pure and luminescent to start living your life, then you don't get your life. Then you're living a fantasy life. You're not living your life. Especially in the last generation, right before Mashiach, where we are tasked with cleaning up all the stuff that's been swept under the carpets, all the epigenetics that we've inherited, and therefore these situations come up readily in our day-to-day life, in our relationship between father and son, between parents, between spouses, between people. All of this is there, as we spoke about before. When you're triggered, we spoke about this last night, when you're triggered, this is an open invitation to heal. When you recognize an inner trigger, it just means there's an unhealed wound that you need to work on. The animal soul, the ego will say, I don't like it. And will come with all kinds of reasoning. Sometimes the greater the animal soul, it could come up with even spiritual reasons. Well, because then I'll feel tarnished, and then I won't be able to serve God, and I will, whatever it is. But the reality is, then you don't understand your purpose here. In order for you to be able to work on you, God gives you what to work on. Says about Shem Tov, and this is what the Rebbe says, Sur Mira through Asatov. You abstain from negativity through pursuing goodness and light. Often, negativity in itself is an absence of light. And so all you have to do, instead of fight it, is shed light on it. And then a lot of the negativity just starts waning away because it has no real substance. However, in the same token, sometimes there's an essential darkness, not an absence of light. As we say in our davening, Yotzer Or, he creates light, he forms light, Uvoreh Choshech, and creates darkness. There's a darkness that Hashem creates, not because it's an absence of light, but rather in and itself is a higher form of light, exponentially higher form of light. There are two spectrums of light. There's a light that when it shines, it reveals. When you shine a light upon something, it reveals. And then there is a light, which is called darkness, that when you shine it, it obscures. In Kabbalah, Hasidus explains that darkness actually precedes light, is higher than light. Because the darkness in itself, the reason why darkness is higher than conventional light, because by definition, essence cannot reveal itself. Essence doesn't fluctuate, it doesn't grow, it doesn't diminish. In order for light to occur, it has to emanate from the luminary, and it has to continue to travel, and it has different spectrums as it's traveling. But essence, by definition, doesn't change, it doesn't fluctuate, it cannot reveal itself. Something, the more essential something is, the less it can reveal itself. We understand essence as darkness, the absence of clarity, the absence of light. But the darker situation only is indicative of how much greater the growth that could come from this. But from this, we cannot utilize just our external senses, our external talents, and our abilities, not our mind, not our hearts, not our emotions, but rather in order to respond to this and reveal the darkness for what it's meant to be, an exponentially higher light, you have to probe into the essence of who you are. Your pintali, your quintessential self. And that's the reason that darkness was given to you in the first place. In order, because your mind wouldn't be able to answer these questions, your emotions wouldn't be able to satisfy this situation, neither your experiences. In this moment, unlike the conventional work, in this moment, what's required of you to go way beyond your own mind and your emotions into your essence. And that's the reason why God brought this situation into your life in the first place, to extract the real you out. So in the pursuit of light, rather than focusing on darkness, understanding that this darkness is a type of light and what's required of it, required in order to resolve it and transform it, as Shlomo HaMelech says, wisdom. There is an how do you say this? Yitron. There's an advantage of wisdom over foolishness, and there's an advantage of light over darkness. There's two ways to interpret this advantage of light over darkness. When a person is submerged in darkness, in a dark cave, and somebody offers them a candle with a light. So that this little bit of light, in contrast to the looming darkness, well, wow, this is so beautiful. So definitely this light, in the middle of darkness, definitely bears an amazing advantage. As we know, a little bit of light dispels a lot of darkness. But then there's a deeper way of interpreting this, as Chassidus explains. Yison ha'or, the advantage of light, emanates from darkness. That the ultimate light, the ultimate clarity, the ultimate growth comes directly from dealing with the darkness in itself. In other words, the darkness, the lack of clarity, the pain, the issues, the epigenetics, the generational traumas, that's not besides the point. That's like saying, it's not, one should not say, well, if it wasn't for these issues I was raised with and those traumas I was given, then I surely could be so illuminescent and so purposeful and so this and that. Again, that's living a fantasy. That's your life because you already have that. So now that you have that, this is just a way of the animal soul dispelling its own need to take responsibility. Those kind of people get stuck in life, in their own rat story. Rather, Yisro Rabba Min HaChoshech means if I've already got these darknesses, if I got these situations, it's not besides the point. It's very much the point. Because if I respond, don't react. Like today we had a class I posted just before in Machochana, the different reaction and response from the previous Rebbe's diary that we sort of touched upon in the Farbrengen in the Ohel. Reactions come from the animal soul. Feeling meek, feeling this, feeling that. But ultimately it's a reaction. It doesn't resolve anything. It's just a way of pushing away. You touch me where it hurts, you hurt me. But if it hurts, it means now I recognize something needs to be dealt with. I need to actually start responding to it. And by the way, and we have to put this very importantly here. Many people falsely think that in order to do this correctly, sit down and daven all day and say Tehillim and this and go get to tzaddikim and make gebrachot and so on and so forth. You said this last week, I believe. God gives you darkness and you throw it back to Him. God, take it away. Then you don't understand how valuable you are. You don't understand how strong you are, and you don't understand how essentially monumental you are to God's purpose in this world. To throw it back at Him, that's not your purpose. You have to have self-work. But where does self-work begin? As we mentioned yesterday, self-work begins by recognizing your true self, how good you are, how luminescent you are, how holy you are. The beginning point of self-work is, I am good. Oh, I have these situations. Then how do I use this goodness, my inborn, inherent goodness, to be able to deal and respond with these issues? But not that these issues are my definition. Not because it happened to me, because he said this to me, because she did this to me, because I already messed up, then that's it. That's a fantasy that the Yetzer Hara sells to us. But rather, yes, you have these issues, can't ignore them. But how many times have we said in the course of the last 2 weeks? A foolish person blames everybody around them. A smart person blames only themselves. A wise person blames nobody. Because how is it going to help you to blame anyone? As a matter of fact, that's just going to make you feel worse and worse. But rather, take action. A wise person takes action. Immediate. Okay, this is a situation as is. What do I need to do about it right now? What's the best thing that the Torah tells me to do right now? Conventional, unconventional, but what do I need to do? Otherwise, at what point do you start living your life? And more importantly, none of us are here for ourselves. We are a link in a chain, a link that ties thousands of years before us into what comes after us. And you could say, well, I believe, I don't believe, I like, I don't like. Well, that's the thing. You're here to transmit what came before you to after you. We know one thing for sure, that we're seeing this openly, that the klipa of this generation is to disconnect kids from where they came from. Because if you want to destroy the tree, you just disconnect it from the roots. And you don't have to chop anything. It will already wither away by itself. Versus the studies that we spoke about from the Mayo Clinic and the Harvard, the long study, 70 years study from Harvard, the strongest agent for a kid is to definitely know where they come from. But each and every one of us are in the driver's seat, in the pilot seat. We are there to connect with who came before us and what comes after us. Now, granted, if you come from Russia, parents came from Russia. And apparently, if you come from Mashhad, you also came from Russia. Right? We didn't know this, but we found this out this week.
What?
We found this week.
What?
How did that happen?
They moved.
I haven't
from
sent that memo out to all my machetes. I'm refraining.
It's
I'm afraid I might give them a heart attack.
You tell them you're just a version of us. We're the real. You tell them we're the real machetes.
Can you imagine?
Because they moved from Ukraine to Mashhad to escape pogroms.
But they look different from Ukrainians. Like from the Ukrainians.
They look different.
That's so interesting.
They integrated, but but anyway. So let's just say you came from the former Soviet Union, your parents did, or from this or for that, whatever it is.
Does she know Leia? Do you know Leia?
Or from this or from that. So maybe for a generation or two, there was a humongous lapse. Not complete lapse, but there was a lapse. Because of Stalin, because of Hitler, because of the trials and tribulations of moving to America in the early 1900s with the Great Depression. But that's an anomaly. That's not the truth. It's fact. It's factual truth, not actual truth. So, that might have been true, that maybe the way you were raised and so on and so forth, that wasn't the part, but thousands of years, that was the truth.
So all Jews were holding in the same place, like 100 or 200.
Not the same place, different, but there was the foundational truth that this is who we are and this is what we're here to achieve. Some did it this way, some did it that way, but we're like all one big body. So the heart does life one way, the liver does it this way, the toe does it this way, but it's all one big body. It's there to promote life, so long as it does in unison. However, to say, I'm not comfortable with this, I like this, I don't like this, well, question, fine, you might, but your self-occupation might be preventing not just the transmission of what came before, but you might be preventing your future generations from living their lives as well. Because of epigenetics trauma that inserted itself because of external forces that crept in to our lives, doesn't remove the essential truth. Sur merav asatov, abstain from bad and do good, means you, in our generations, you want to do good, stop focusing on what's wrong. Stop focusing on what didn't happen. Stop focusing on the doubts and this and this and this, because the more you focus on that, especially in our generation, the more you get trapped with them. Because there's so many other issues in our generation aside from everything else that happened before. Rather, surah mera, abstain from bad, through doing good. The more you focus on the light, and the light is the trajectory. So even when there's darkness, the question that you are led through this darkness is, how do I utilize this darkness to grow? Not how this darkness is an impediment for growth. This already happened to me. He already said this to me. I was raised this way. I wasn't raised this way. Whatever it is. But if this was the setting that was given to me, then this is where I'm meant to shed light, transform it. Then comes the last part of the pasuk, Bakesh Shalom v'ratfeu. Seek harmony and pursue it. What does that mean? Harmony is not peace. Harmony is harmony, a blend. The shalom we're speaking about is the ultimate purpose of a Jew. To harmonize between the spiritual and the physical. And in harmony is that they blend and synergize and start acting as one. When we focus on light, on clarity, Yetzer Hara will always try to make us focus on what we don't have, what didn't happen, what should have happened but didn't, and so on and so forth. Remember, I was sitting with a young couple once, and she's like, I gotta go, I have guests, and I didn't prepare, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. And she was like, all panicky. I was like, look, the Yetzer Hara will make you focus on what you didn't do. God doesn't expect you to serve with what you don't have. God only expects you to serve with what you have right now. Very simple. So whatever you have, that's what you bring to the table. Very simple. They're not coming. They're not coming to a restaurant. They're not coming to a restaurant. They're coming as achnasat orchim. It's a mitzvah, and the mitzvah is there to be performed with what you have, not what you don't have. So Yetzer Hara will always try to minimize this mitzvah, or even push the Jew away from it. It's like, look, I can't do this. I don't have, so no, it's not a good idea. But who says that that's what you need to do?
That came from a Russian household.
Exactly.
I came from a household where I had to.
And that's why he's teaching us, making sure that we have to change
I came from a household where I had to peel food from underneath the table in the lunchroom, pretending to tie my shoes so I could eat.
Right.
We didn't have any money. We didn't have any. There's times we didn't have anything. Literally for weeks and weeks, we had maybe smitana, bread and eggs, cereal at times. But, in other words, and so what? Because I came as I did, so that means that's not because I came from poverty, because I came from this, that's it? No. Just the opposite. Utilize that. Whatever setting you have, that's the setting you're meant to utilize. To say, well, if I had this, and if this, then it's not your life. And God didn't configure your life this way. God configured your life absolutely to the note of what you're meant to accomplish in this world, in the setting you're meant to accomplish. The God that most people pursue is a God of fantasy. It's not a real God. Like the Levi Yitzchak Berditchev, once a Jew came up to him and started opening up, Rabbi, I don't believe in God because of this, a God who sits in heaven with a beard, and like this. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak told him very simple. The same God you don't believe in, I don't believe in either. That's a man-made God. That's a construct of the Yetzer Hara to placate the people who are serving this God because it makes me feel good. And we spoke about the difference between goodness and holiness on the other day in the morning. You're not, in the Tanya class, I'm sorry. You're here to serve. And the service is whatever you have. That's it. Our aim is to to harmonize between physical and spiritual, between finite and infinite, between past generation and the present and the next generation. So to be hung up about he said, she said, this happened to me, this, this and this. Well, understand, you're meant to work on it, yes. To the best of your ability, yes, you're meant to work on it. No question about it. But first of all, that's work has to come from self, from your true self, from your godly self, not your animal self. Because the animal self will create a God for itself. It will create a construct that makes it feel good in order to make it feel that I don't have to push, or maybe I could run away from here, I could do this. That's my own God, and that's called idol worship. That's a human being serving themselves. By the way, interestingly enough, in Hebrew, what's the word for idol worship? Avodah zarah. What does that mean? Strange work. It's called strange work because it's strange to you. It's foreign to you. It's not going to do it for you. And not only that, if you pursue it and you actively work on yourself, quote unquote, because avodah means, as we spoke about many times, the Gemara says from ibud orot, from tanning hides. When you take an animal and you shecht it, you slaughter it, leave it alone, it's going to wither away, it's going to stink, and so on and so forth. But here we peel the skin, and then we start treating it. And yes, it's going to stink. Yes, it's going to stick to high heaven. But you treat it, and you take the skin that was prone to withering away and disintegrating, and you make it leather, the strongest fiber. You work on it more. You make a cloth for the tefillin, for the mezuzah, for Torah, the leather. In other words, not only you make it the most durable fiber, you make it the holiest fiber. In other words, the word avodah means to take something which is essentially disgusting. And every single sense will tell you it's disgusting. But to work and to work and to work and to work until it becomes the strongest point in your character. And then to work and to work and to work to make it the holiest point of your character. But avodah zarah means self-work or any type of work of I'm going to work like this, I'm going to do this. But it's foreign to you. And eventually, the more you work along that line, the more you become a foreigner to yourself. You become estranged for yourself. And that's very sad. Because I hear all the time, I work so hard, I understand my children don't, I work so hard, I understand my spouse, I don't work, I work so, yeah, you're working hard. But who says this is the direction? A car could be driving 100 miles an hour. But that 100 miles an hour that's driving, if it's not going to the right direction, it's going 100 miles an hour towards getting lost. It's moving, the engine is revving up, you're using fuel. Incidentally, eventually you have to come back anyway. But you have less gas, and you're already wasting a lot of time. Eventually you'll come back. You know, I mentioned yesterday, I was, after our chat with Sulik, I'm like the other cousin, I walked by yesterday, Sulik on the phone with I don't know who, and he repeated the some of the sentiments. If you hold yourself a tefach above the world, the laws of the world don't apply to you. Like starts like bavur. And the crazy thing is, like I give him a kiss, I whispered in his ear, I'm very proud of you. But I mentioned to him, and plus the fact that he's teaching here, I mentioned him a conversation that he and I had years ago, when I told him, Sulik, you at no point, even 90 feet up in the air, can an apple tree decide I'm going to become an orange tree. You can't. It's not, you come from where you're at. This is your trajectory. And I said, Sulik, whatever you're going to do, you can't escape it. You're going to come there. And he said, no. And I said, Sulik, this is exactly what I screwed to my parents. So exactly what I told my parents. And he says, no, it's never going to happen. And then at that point, I told him, Sulik, and when he said, I'm never going to do any of this, I said, Sulik, now I know you're good. Because I said that too, and I saw myself. And so yesterday when I saw him, and I said, Sulik, you remember that conversation? And look at you. You're teaching. You're teaching, and...
So you're in the know, Srulik is his 16-year-old son.
Who's an incredible teacher. Incredible.
And you're teaching, and not only that, you are now, look, you're speaking like me. And he's like, yeah, I'm getting it from you. But as far as he pushed away, I mean, he's, I think out of all the
How did
kids,
he come back? What him wait here?
it's a series of conversations, a lot of conversations, accepting for who he is, the fact that once you realize, once a parent realizes, I'm not here to change you, I'm not here to get nachat ruach from you, you're not here to serve me, you can't embarrass me, because embarrassment is or nachat is not something I'm here to get. I'm here to facilitate your growth, your purpose. God gave me you, God gave you me, and I'm here to help you to get to the best place you can get. Whether you're going to be like me or not going to be like me, this is how you are. You have your strength. But it's specifically when I recognize that he is like literally a mini-me. Out of all my kids, he is the one. All of them rebelled to a certain extent. Well, 5 of them rebelled. But the second I recognized with Sulik that he is literally at 15, 16, he is exact a version of me. Go to the city dressing up with the same exact Jenko jeans and go to this and the poetry that he writes and everything else. The second we find a common denominator, I was vulnerable to say, look, we're the same. So, there's no reason to change you. Let's just talk. Once you begin with acceptance, you can't imagine how much goodness can come out of it. But incidentally, the same thing goes with your own inner child. The second you stop fighting your inner child, the second you stop fighting, then you're ready to start working. Because, and this is what was the point in the Machlochana, what Stephen Covey said in his book, cause plus blank equals the effect. Cause is God. Any cause, your parents, traumas, your background, your foreground, what you did, that's all. What happened thus far is God. Plus blank, what's a blank? We discussed it before. The way you perceive this cause and choose to respond to the cause will determine the effect. When in inanimate objects, in plant life, in an animal kingdom, cause equals effect. You throw the plant, you throw the cup, cause is thrown, effect is it's going to be launched and fall somewhere. A plant, you plant it in the ground, that's the cause. There's fertile ground, there's irrigation, photosynthesis is going to grow. It has no choice. An animal, too, is programmed. It doesn't have a choice. Do I want to eat the zebra or not? If it's hungry, it must eat. It's not a big bad wolf. It's programmed to eat. When it's hungry, it must eat. Cause equals effect. Very simple. Human beings are the only ones who are able to overwrite instinct for something greater than survivability. By us, cause does not equal effect. By us, cause plus the way we choose to perceive the cause and respond, not react to the cause, will determine the effect. But in America and Western culture, we're taught fight the causes. Fight the cause. Fight the cause. Speaking today in Machochana, I said, look, I've never seen America this way. I've been here 41 years. I've never seen this way. Let's just take BLM. Fight the cause. Fight the cause. They fought causes. They fight causes all the time. Anything changed? Anything improved? Any significant legislation went into being? Their quality of life, all of a sudden they BLM Black Lives, so let's stop killing each other? No. You want to fight a cause, that's your animal soul. You just want to eliminate. The ego it's not comfortable with things that make it feel weak and meek or challenges. So it wants to eliminate, like you have to prey on it. You have to destroy it before it destroys you. You fight a cause. We have to respond to the cause. Stop fighting it. You have to respond. In response, you have to say, what is God inviting me to do because of this? What is necessary for ultimate growth to reveal light in this situation? I don't have to fight that my parents were a certain way. I don't have to fight that I made these mistakes. I don't have to. These are all causes in my life. Fine. I want to fight. I want to sit in therapy my entire life. And at what point do I start living? I want to go find light and clarity in my entire life. At what point are you going to start living your life practically? Torah is not in heaven. Torah is not about feeling good and spiritual and wise and everything. That's not Torah. That's a man-made construct. If God wanted us to feel spiritual, He could have just left us in heaven. The fact that God drew our souls into the darkest of all the four worlds, the world that the Torah itself deems the most concealed. You see a battle, you don't even see the quantum energy over here. You don't see bacteria. I mean, this is a world that's absolutely a world of concealment and deceit. And yet this is where God brought us here. It's not so we could feel hunky-dory. It's nice if you feel that way. Don't try to fight that. But that's not the aim. The aim in this world is to show up, to be present in your life. You know, like a mother, you wake up at 3 a.m. with your child who's colicky, or if you're a dad and you wake up in the middle of the night with a child and you have to walk out, you have to like take a walk around the block with him to calm him down. This is not one of those moments where you think that this is the bonding moments. This is the moments that you feel like this is fatherhood. But this is fatherhood. This is motherhood. This is it. This is exactly it. In the mood, not in the mood. This is what you're here for. You feel good about it, don't feel good about it. To the one who you're with, it means everything. Because imagine you tell your child at 1 year old, 2 years old, listen, I'm not in the mood. Let me go and learn parenting psychology. Let me work on my own trauma with my parents. And then I'll do a lot of self-work, and when I'm good and ready to be a good parent to you, I'll come and change your diaper. At what point do you actually start parenting? Rather, God created to do. God created Elokim, Tzimtzum, contraction, in order for us to come and do, to fix. So Tikkun Olam is when we recognize that there's a flaw, when there's a discrepancy, and as soon as we recognize it, what do I have? What talent, what knowledge do I have right now? What resources? Who do I speak to in order to start working on this practically? And for this, we wake up and we wash our hands. We wash our hands because with these hands, the power of deed, because we're here for the deed, for the practice, we're here and we need to be able to wash the impediments, the egocentric impediments, away, so we could be very, very purposeful. Let's read on page number 26. From the Friya de Kerebi, a discourse, from a piece of a discourse from the Friya de Kerebi. I'm going to read. This is one of the differences between intellect and emotions. Whereas intellect operates deliberately and logically, emotion is wild and violent. Whether it loves or hates, pure emotion is forceful and passionate. This is the purpose of Netilat Yadaim. Pouring water represents the flow of intellect. As we spoke about in the previous class, that water is akin to intellect. In order to purify the emotions, the hands, although they're the tools of operation, but the hands, as we learned before, chesed and gvura, the primary reactive emotions. As we spoke about last night, we have the reactive, kindness and severity, discipline, love, and the opposite. Those are reactive. I love or I don't like. I want to draw closer and open up, or I want to push away from it. Those are reactive to me. Then you have the proactive emotions, which corresponds to the right leg and left leg. Netzach, perseverance, grit, I got to push forward, no matter what comes in. And the left leg, humility, take a step back, etc. But the first ones, the base emotions, which are considered to be the offsprings of the neshama, is chesed and gvura. So, we wash upon our hands with water, representing the flow of intellect. Water is intellect. In order, and again, it's not just representing. The energy of water. What made water water? Why is water water? Why? Because of H2O? Yeah, that's the chemical makeup. In the physical world, God created chemicals in order to to invest his energy in, so the flow could happen one way or another. So the fact is that water flows from above to below, and it's constantly moving. That's the dynamic of the mind. It's akin to the same energy of the intellect. As we know one thing, the brain is cold. Intellect is cold. It's moist, and the brain is moist. This is the energy of water. And so, it says, representing the flow of intellect in order to purify the emotions of their more destructive property and place them under the influence of the mind. In other words, first thing in the morning, if you're going to be purposeful in the morning, throughout your day, one thing you cannot be led by, your emotions. And specifically the wild emotions, untamed. It's not that we have to rid ourselves of emotion, we just have to purify the emotions, that the emotions will be under the charge of the intellect. When I have to show love, I have to show love. When I have to be firm and say, no, this doesn't work, then that's what's necessary. It's not reactive, well, it's not going to make me feel good. It's not, well, who says you're here to feel? That's destructive. How many parents don't parent their children correctly because of their own emotions? Because you're making me feel bad. Or, I don't want to make them, you're here to do? If you're going to be purposeful, it's not, God forbid, to eliminate the emotions, but you got to make sure the emotions, which are the offsprings of the intellect, the father and the mother, the right brain and left brain, the emotions have to be under the guise of the intellect. God forbid, a child without without parents. In Hebrew, in Israel, we used to call them outside kids, street kids. In other words, these are kids that are just like running without any parents. So that's, right, so these are emotions that are not being, this is exactly, the kids are just running amok. 1 second you're in a good mood, so you're going, I love you, Khan. The next one you go, get away from me. That's violent, that's chaos. You can't build like that, ever, anything. Any type of creativity is destroyed like that. Healthy configuration is the mind oversees and leads the emotions. Incidentally, Kabbalah explains that emotions are rooted much higher than the intellect. And ultimately, Kabbalah explains that there is a level called a level within the heart that even surpasses, of the emotions surpass openly the intellect and reveal the ultimate desire of the neshama. But that's what happens when the parents raise the children correctly, the intellect raises the emotions correctly, then the ultimate purpose of a parent raising the children is literally to raise them above themselves, not to raise them to their same level. You want your child to exceed you. And perhaps, as we spoke about in the parenting class, honoring your parents only is with your body, not with your soul. Why? Because your soul might come from a much higher level than your parents' soul. So that's why they can't tell you who to marry, where to live, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Your parents can't tell you who to vote for. Your parents can't tell you which city to live in, where to live. Your parents can't tell you who to marry, which yeshiva to go to. I mean, you should take their advice into consideration,
They can guide you.
But you don't have.
They can tell
But you
you
don't have to follow it. Ultimately, that's your decision. You should listen. You should take it into consideration. Why? You have to serve your parents. You have to honor and respect your parents with your body, because after all, they're responsible for bringing your body into this world. But the soul, that's God. And maybe your soul comes from a much higher level than theirs, and that's why they don't understand. Why are you marrying this person? Why are you moving here? Why are you going to the yeshiva now? Why did you go to the same school I went to? Because maybe your soul comes from a much higher level. And for that reason, same thing with emotions. The emotions stem from an exponentially higher place than the intellect does. The intellect gives birth to the emotions, but the emotions don't originate in the intellect. And therefore, the intellect raising the emotions, constantly refining the emotions, removing any toxicity from the emotions, self-driven and so on and so forth, and gives it an absolute purpose, raises, and the emotions could actually reveal a whole different dimension of the persona, of the spirituality, of the soul, of God, even higher than the intellect. But for that, you need to raise the kids. Kids don't, when they're without being raised, they become not only street kids. The Torah says a human being is born like an absent mule, like a wild mule. You have to raise it. So for this reason, before we start our daily service, we have to wash our hands.
Do we say the bracha before?
No, not yet. In the Netilat Yadaim process, the hands are washed gradually, alternating hands with each pour of water, purifying one emotion. Why? Because we have ultimately 6 emotions. Malchut, obedience, is the one that receives from all the emotions. So we want to purify each emotion, and that's the actual kavanah. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach. In other words, I'm purifying my ability to connect to other people today. I'm purifying my ability to be open and malleable today.
That's why?
And now I'm purifying my ability to be disciplined today. That it won't be, because I'm pure, because unrefined chesed, as we spoke about many times, love could be very, very selfish. I love you because what you're doing for me. I don't love you, I love what you're doing for me. So the second you don't do it for me, get away from me. It's not love, it's manipulation. Discipline in itself could be very corrupted. Instead of being disciplined, you become judgmental and start screaming or anxiety and panic attacks and all kinds of stuff. It comes from the same place, but it's corrupted. Netzach, perseverance, could become very, very quickly stubbornness. I don't want to. Why? There's no reason. I don't have to explain myself. Hod, humility could very much be corrupted. It's like, I'm nobody, I'm nothing, I'm meek, weak. That creates the unhealthy empathy that we spoke about, that produces narcissism. In other words, each of the emotions, if it's not refined, creates toxicity. It doesn't reveal you. Actually, the more you lend yourself into it, the more it obscures you. The more it shuts you from your relationships. Then, until we rinse out all the emotions. Finally, page 27 is from a discourse from 1948, from the previous Rebbe. The essential core of the soul transcends the consciousness that gives life to the body. So too, it is completely unaffected by anything that occurs to the body. It is unaffected by the body's smallness and greatness, or the body's strength and weakness. It is fundamentally removed from the body, and only God's ability to perform wondrously binds it to the body and unites it to the spiritual material. This is a kavanah of the Asher Yatzar. When we say Maflila Asot, he does wonders at the end. The kavanah that we have to say when we say Maflila Asot is that Hashem, and this creates the pathway to the daily service, is to unite and meld and to harmonize between the body consciousness and the soul consciousness, between the spiritual and the corporal, between the finite and the infinite, between the object that we're going to be dealing with, the food that we're going to be consuming, and everything in this world, and its divine source. This is a harmony. We'll continue this next time.